What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to JJD TV. I'm your host Josh, and this is another episode of our new series, Canadian Men's National Team Players Abroad, where we take a look at all the Canadian Men's National Team players playing abroad and give you guys an update. And this is your guys' update from November 1st to November 8th. So we're going to take a look at all of our Canucks playing abroad, how they did midweek, how they did over the weekend, and we're really excited for it. This series has been really well received. We want to thank you guys so much for all the support. So if you guys are new to the channel and you guys like this kind of content, be sure to drop a like on today's video. Be sure to drop a sub as well. You've helped us reach 6,000 subscribers, and a big shout out to our friends from Canucks Abroad as always. So let's get into the update now. Alright guys, like we always do on this series, we are going to start with our Big Five, and just a disclosure that Tajon Buchanan is not in the Big Five for this week because of the MLS wrap-up I want to do towards the end, just to talk about Decision Day and how they all did there, so I'm going to keep him involved there. But we are going to start with someone who is always going to be in our Big Five, and that is Alfonso Davies. Alfonso Davies and his Bayern Munich took on Benfica midweek in the Champions League, in which was another successful match for Alfonso Davies and Bayern. They won 5-2, and they sit in first place in their Champions League group with a 4-0 record. Davies played as usual as a left back in a 4-2-3-1, had a very good game as well. He only played 64 minutes in it, but he did get an assist and was ever present as he always is. They took that momentum into the weekend as Alfonso Davies once again started as a left back in a 4-2-3-1. He played all 90 minutes. He had an 88% pass completion. He created 6 chances, 70 touches on the ball, 6 recoveries, and played a big part in Lewandowski's lead-up goal. It was very well wing play, what we always see Alfonso Davies do before the ball eventually found Lewandowski for just a little tap in there. Bayern beat Freiburg 2-1 to go 9-1-1 to sit first place in the table. Bayern are flying right now. Alfonso Davies is playing some fantastic football. Nagelsmann seems to not really steady the ship because, I mean, Bayern have been successful right from the off, but it looked like there might have been some type of a transition period there, but Nagelsmann has really found his way in. Freiburg is not a team that you want to take lightly. They're having an incredible start to their Bundesliga season as well, and they're showing what they can do and why Bayern is Bayern to sit top of the table. Moving on over to Jonathan David now. He had some success in the midweek as well, as Lille's had a really inconsistent up and down season, but one man on that side who has not been inconsistent is our boy Jonathan David. In midweek, seeing Lille take on Sevilla. Sevilla, in my eyes, were favorites to top this group. This was still the group of life, but Sevilla were my odds-on favorite to top the group, and then the other 3 teams were supposed to battle it out. Sevilla has been pretty disappointing, and Lille's been a little bit overachieving right now, as midweek Lille picked up a massive 2-1 victory against Sevilla, and our boy Jonathan David, with a massive shout-out to him, picks up his first ever Champions League goal as he scored from the spot in a big win. And with that win, it puts Lille in a very comfortable position as they sit second place in the Champions League standings with a 1-2-1 record. Unfortunately, though, for Lille, they couldn't quite bring that success over to league play. They did start in a 4-4-2 with Jonathan David starting as a striker again. Unfortunately for David, he just really wasn't involved too much. He played 64 minutes and they drew 1-1 to Angers, which is just a disappointing result, especially after that success they found midweek, but maybe those tired legs kind of carried over for the weekend. David was pretty decent, I guess, kind of quiet. He had a 92% pass completion, but he only had 18 touches on the ball. He created 2 chances and had 1 shot, so it just showed as one of those matches where a striker just couldn't get involved in this type of match. Lille sit 12th in the table with a 4-4-5 record, and they've gone 4 matches without a win in league play for the first time in quite a long time in Ligue 1. So Jocelyn Gorovnik is finding bits of success here and there, but he needs to find a way to get this team performing a little bit more consistent so Jonathan David can hopefully at least try to qualify for the Europa League or something along those lines this season. Moving on over to Stefan Eustaquio, we're going to take a look at him and his side, Pacos de Ferreira, at the weekend as they're taking on Sporting. They lined up in the usual 4-3-3 with Eustaquio taking that central role. It was a pretty decent effort from Pacos de Ferreira as Eustaquio played all 90 minutes, having an 87% pass completion rate. He had 3 long balls, 51 touches. He completed 2 out of 3 tackles, 6 recoveries. But unfortunately for Pacos de Ferreira, they lost 2-0 to Sporting, who it's Sporting. We knew it was going to be a tough task regardless, but with that loss, they sit 11th in the table with a 2-5-4 record. Heading on over to Besiktas with the 2 Besiktas boys, Hutchinson and, of course, Kyle Larin. We're going to take a look very briefly at their midweek performances because it's just something you don't want to touch on too much. Besiktas has been having a disastrous Champions League campaign. They're sit right now in the table after 4 matches with 0 wins, 0 draws, and 4 losses. They lost 4-0 to Sporting, getting absolutely run over. Larin and Hutch both started that match and were both subbed off in the 61st minute. Neither one of them put real impact on the match, so it's hard to really touch it. So we're just going to let you guys know that this Champions League campaign was one to get for the players, but they were hoping to bounce back at the weekend where they had to take on a very tough side, taking on the top of the table Trabzonspor, which was going to be an interesting match. Hutch did not have much of an impact on this match. He started on the bench, came on in the 82nd minute. He only had 12 touches. He had a 90% pass completion with 1 recovery, but he just came on late in the match. There wasn't too much to touch on him, but Larin definitely had more of an impact on the match as he started as a left midfielder in a 4-1-4-1 setup. He played 85 minutes, had 40 touches on the ball, a 67% pass completion rate. He had 4 shots for himself. He scored a goal as well as Besiktas lost 2-1 to sit 6th in the table with a 6-2-4 record. So Besiktas are on a bit of a poor form streak in the league, and Kyle Larin had a decent effort playing out on that left-hand side. He had a couple good chances to score, wasn't able to do it, and then had a really awkward kind of goal from a sloppy back pass. It found his way to him to just kind of put into an empty net, but it was still a match for Besiktas. We're trying to hope that they can get back into the title race, and right now Trabzonspor is just showing that they're the way and away league leaders in the league, and Besiktas are going to have to go back to the drawing board and hope to get this form back in play. Alright guys, we're stopping in England now in League One with our boy Theo Corbeanu, a player who I was genuinely pretty concerned of, especially with the game time, but it's starting to seem like our boy might have turned a corner here. Darren Moore seems to be listening to some of the Wednesday fans as well, maybe some of the Canadians, because our guy is playing again. They switched back to this 3-4-1-2 system they like playing. Corbeanu has been basically occupying that left wing-back role. In midweek, Corbeanu started and played 83 minutes as Wednesday beat Sunderland 3-0. So Sunderland had a very hot start to the season, but have definitely cooled off a little bit, but still an impressive and emphatic 3-0 victory. And in that match, Theo got a goal and an assist, plus a man of the match performance playing that left wing-back role. Wednesday sit 8th in the table right now with a 6-7-3 record. Wednesday then on the weekend went to Plymouth in the FA Cup, where Corbeanu once again got even more minutes, was able to start as well. In that match, Corbeanu started, played 76 minutes at the left wing back role again in a 3-5-2 setup, but unfortunately it ended in a boring 0-0 draw, so they'll have to do a replay. Staying in League One and moving over to Burton, we're going to take a look at Daniel Jebsen. Unfortunately for us Canadian fans, he did get a recent call again for the England U19 side, but it's expected. If he's going to take this Canadian call-up eventually, it's going to probably come over a little bit of time. He's still very, very young, but we're going to keep a little update on how he did over the weekend as he started and played 85 minutes as Burton beat Fleetwood 2-1 in the FA Cup. Jebsen scored the game-winning goal in the 77th minute, playing as a striker in a 3-4-1-2 formation. The goal was very, very well taken from Jebsen, and it just shows the confidence this kid is going. Getting the goal in an FA Cup like that, the game-winning goal late in the match in a rainy, ugly atmosphere is just something you love to see. I think it's going to help him grow with confidence as well and hopefully get him back going in some pretty hot goal scoring form in the league. We are now doing our first pit stop in Belgium, guys, and we're going to take a look at Ike Ugbo, our very new Canadian men's national team player who's going to actually probably feature in the upcoming window. So now it's time to take a look at his club form. He's playing for Genk right now, and we get 2 matches to touch on. Both of them, unfortunately for his debut here on the Canadian men's national team abroad series, aren't the best debuts. He was playing midweek in the Europa League against West Ham. It was an impressive result for Genk as they drew 2-2. He was subbed on in the 87th minute, and they did get the equalizer shortly after Ugbo was put on, but there wasn't too much to touch on just because he didn't play too much in that match. But it was still an impressive result, and Genk hit 3rd in the Europa League table with a 1-1-2 record, giving them a fighting chance for qualification. He then moved on to the weekend, and at the weekend he was subbed on at halftime, but in that 45 minutes that he ended up playing against his actual former employers, where he was on loan last year and had so much success scoring those 16 goals in 32 matches, he just unfortunately wasn't able to do too much. He had 0 shots. He only had a 20% pass completion rate, and it was just a pretty frustrating time for him. He only had 8 touches on the ball as they drew against Cercle Brugge 1-1 to sit 6th in the table with a 6-3-5 record. Moving on over to Chile now, we're going to take a look at Juan Cordova, as we've spoke of his side Hachipato and their struggles this season, as they look to be pretty heavy favorites to end up going down in one of those 2 relegation spots. But 2 massive wins have really lifted them up and gave them a fighting chance. Unfortunately though, Cordova has found both of the roles in those 2 wins as bit part roles. He came on in the first match on the 73rd minute and then came on in the 69th minute over the weekend as Hachipato won 1-0 and 2-0 respectively to pull them to 31 points, and they are tied for a relegation playoff spot. They are tied with 15th even though they sit in 16th place right now. So hopefully Cordova can show that he comes off the bench and is useful to hopefully get a side back into the starting 11. But it's good news regardless that his side is hoping to compete and not get relegated with those 2 big wins. And I think with the momentum that they're picking up, there's a good opportunity that they can keep the results coming and avoid relegation. Heading on over to Denmark now with Mandrakar James and Vila. We know that they've had a very poor start to the season, but there's a big bright spot over the weekend as they picked up a massive victory. Mandrakar James started in a 4-4-2 as center back. He played all 90 minutes as Vila won 3-1. James had a pass succession rate of 73%. He had 53 touches on the ball. He won 4 of 7 of his duels, had 10 long balls. Once again, every time we mention James, shows how much he loves to play out from the back, and 10 long balls again could potentially come useful if we ever needed that central center back in a back 3 for the Canadian men's national team. He also had 7 clearances as well, and with that win, it takes Vila to a 2-2-11 record. Unfortunately, they still sit in last place. Heading on over to Greece now, we take a look at Derek Cornelius and Panathinaikos. Again, a player who I was just so excited about and had a very good start to this season. And Panathinaikos are in dreadful form right now, which is not what you want to see when you're looking to come back and obviously play for your national team. Derek Cornelius and his side are going to have to find a way to try to turn this ship around, because over the weekend, Panathinaikos lost once again 3-0, and they sit with a 1-2-6 record, 13th in the table as they're starting to slip down towards the bottom of the league. However, the nice thing is that Cornelius did play all 90 minutes. He's getting the minutes consistently in Greece. It's just the performances that look so successful to start the season are very much starting to slip. And hopefully Cornelius and his side can figure out form so they aren't fighting a relegation battle all season long. Heading on over to Norway, we're going to take a look at Theo Bear once again and his side HamKam. As we know, Theo Bear, as I've been touching on him very recently, they've been playing very consistently in that 3-5-2. He usually plays around that 70-ish minute mark, and he hasn't been putting up numbers in the last few games, and this is pretty much the same thing we've seen again. He played 73 minutes as HamKam won 1-0 against Blink to sit top of the table right now with a 19-6-3 record. Theo Bear is not getting the goal production that we were kind of hoping for. He does still have decent numbers right now, but the last few matches he's been very, very quiet in front of goal, and we're hoping that he can turn it around as he's playing for the top side in the 2nd division right now in Norway. He is on the winning side. He is getting that confidence. I just would like to see Theo Bear find the back a little bit more to show that he's still sniffing around that striker position, in which is starting to get deeper and deeper for the Canadian men's national team. But it's still good to see him finding success in his side as well, as they're almost guaranteed to have a very successful season and hopefully show that they compete in Norway in the top division next season. Moving on over to Portugal now, we're going to take a look at Steven Vitória and his side Moreirense as they took on Vitória de Guimarães over the weekend. Vitória started in that match and played all 90 minutes with a 68% pass completion. He had 8 long balls, 48 touches. He won 8 out of 11 duels with 2 headed clearances and 6 recoveries. Unfortunately though, for Moreirense, they lost 2-1 and they sit 15th place in the table with a 1-5-5 record. They did climb out of the dangerous relegation places for now, but they need to find a little bit more consistency because they are a good enough side to compete a little bit higher up the table and get away from that relegation zone. Heading on over to Scotland now, guys, we're going to take a look at a matchup that should have featured a bunch of Canadians, but Scott Arfield unfortunately did not feature as well as Ben Patton, as Ross County and Rangers took each other on. The one player who did feature in that match though was Harry Patton, who had a very good matchup indeed. Patton started the match and played all 90 minutes with a 74% pass completion. He created 4 chances, had 6 long balls, 58 touches, and was fouled 3 times. In that time, he had 10 recoveries and an assist as well, as Rangers beat Ross County 4-2. Rangers sit first in the table with a 9-3-1 record, and Ross County sit on the bottom of the table in 12th place with a 1-3-8 record. As poor as Ross County have been this year, Harry Patton seems to have consistent performances throughout, and he could be a very, very useful player with our midfield, especially with Hutch being at the age of 38 and having a young player like Harry Patton playing at a competitive level. Getting these performances could potentially get him looked at for a transfer maybe to a higher side in the Scottish League, maybe over to England as well. But it is some pretty impressive performances in my eyes from Harry Patton, and the Canadian men's national team will probably keep an eye out for him as well. Moving on over to David Wotherspoon and his side, St. Johnstone. At the weekend, he was subbed on in the 67th minute. He had 24 touches on the ball. He created one chance and had one shot on target. Was sort of quiet. He didn't have a ton of minutes to try to show what he was obviously able to do so successfully last year for St. Johnstone, as they drew 0-0 to St. Mirren, which was a stalemate of a match. They sit 9th place in the table with a 3-5-5 record. They are definitely underachieving from the success that St. Johnstone shown last year. I'd like to see David Wotherspoon start to get these minutes and start to produce a little bit more, get on the score sheet, get in with an assist, because he's such a creative, talented player. I do like him with the national team, but I want to see those minutes start rising as well with those goal contributions. Moving on over to Serbia now and taking a look at our main man between the sticks, Milan Borjan. We have 2 matches to touch on. He was in the Europa League loss 1-0 midweek. It was a tough loss as well. He did start, played all 90 minutes, and right now Red Star in the Europa League sits second in their table with a 2-1-1 record. Still look like heavy favorites to make it on to the knockout stages. They were able to bounce back, fortunately, at the weekend with a 2-1 victory. Borjan was not able to keep the clean sheet, but did start and still played all 90 minutes as they sit second in the table with a 12-2-1 record. Borjan and his side are finding a lot of success in the league standings this year and definitely want to compete for the title. Borjan has been one of the standout players, and he's hoping to keep that up going into the national window. Moving on over to Switzerland now, we're going to take a look at my boy Liam Miller, a player who I've just been so impressed with this season. We've got 2 matches to touch on. I've been happy with both of Miller's performances. I just unfortunately was not super happy with the overall results for FC Basel. But we'll take a look at the first match, which was the Europa Conference League midweek matchup, as FC Basel unfortunately drew 1-1, which is a somewhat annoying result there. They started in a bit of an unorthodox system. They played with the 4-3-2-1 system, having those 2 kind of floating players in the middle, Liam Miller being one of them out on the left-hand side. He started, played 85 minutes, and scored a goal as Basel drew that match. They sit second in the Conference League with a 2-2-0 record. At the weekend, Basel lost, which was a 1-0 loss, their first loss of the season. Some frustration there. In that match, Miller did start, played 88 minutes in the 4-2-3-1, playing at the left attacking mid, the system, and the position he's probably favored to play. He had 7 crosses, 77 touches on the ball, which is a lot of touches. Shows how involved he is playing and how important of a role he is for this FC Basel side. Unfortunately, though, with all those touches, he only created 1 shot for himself. He had 6 out of 10 dribbles completed, which is a pretty decent dribble completion rate, as Basel still sit in first place with a 7-5-1 record. But the other teams around them are starting to really catch up, and this was hopefully be a few results that Basel could have got more points than what they'd got to get a little bit of distance away. But the one big thing to take away is that Liam Miller is playing, and is playing out of his skin right now. It's incredible to see, and I'm hoping he gets some good minutes with the Canadian men's national team this window. Heading on over to Turkey now, we're taking a look at Sam Atakubi, our boy who's been, again, we always mention it, the revelation of the left backs for the Turkish league, and he really is, as his side Hasanspor, unfortunately at the weekend had a loss, and it was a frustrating loss. He started at left back in a 4-3-3. He played 90 minutes, had 83% pass completion. He won 3 out of 6 duels with 2 interceptions, 5 clearances, 5 recoveries. But with that 1-0 loss, they now sit second in the table with a 7-2-3 record. Alright guys, it's time for our last stop here on this week's episode of the Canadian Men's National Team Abroad series, and it's going to be the USA. Because in the USA, for the MLS, it was a decision day yesterday, and it was a fun matchup. I watched a ton of games yesterday, saw a ton of highlights, and I'm going to give you just a little update about how our Canucks playing over in the US are doing right now and which ones will be fighting for the MLS Cup. We won't go into crazy detail on every single player, but just give you a nice little roundup, starting with Alistair Johnston and his side, Nashville, who finished in 3rd in the East and will be a nice little outside shot who could be a team that could compete for the MLS Cup. Ashton Morgan and his side, Real Salt Lake, finished 7th with a nail-biter, scoring in the 90th minute plus 5 minutes of extra time to guarantee that they finished in 7th and jumped over the LA Galaxy. Morgan didn't feature in that match, however, but the Real Salt Lake had quite a story to be able to clinch the playoffs just at the death. Moving on over to Tyler Pasher and his side, Houston, a season kind of to forget. They will not be in playoffs. Moving on over to Akindele in Orlando City, they will be. They finished 6th in the East, and Akindele and his side have a nice little opportunity in the Eastern playoffs to compete for the MLS Cup. Dane St. Clair, the backup keeper for Minnesota United. Minnesota had a very successful season, and a lot of people are thinking that Minnesota could have be a good shout as well for a deep run in the West as they finished in 5th place. Mark Anthony K and his side, Colorado Rapids, ended up finishing first in the West, which is incredible. Since making the move over from LAFC, K has been a big, prominent role in the Colorado Rapids, and it looked like they weren't going to be one of the teams battling it out. It looked like Seattle was going to be the team to top the West, but the Colorado Rapids came out of absolutely nowhere to finish first in the West and get a bye for those all-important first-round playoffs. Raheem Edwards for LAFC. Unfortunately, this is the first year LAFC has not made the playoffs. I am impressed with Edwards. I'm hoping he's someone we can touch on a little bit more to maybe get that call up for the Canadian men's national team, as he's a very unique player, getting good minutes as well. But Bob Bradley and his side are falling flat this year and did not qualify for the playoffs for the very first time. Moving on over now to Tajon Buchanan and the New England Revolution. As we've already touched on, they ran away with the league. They finished first in the East and won the Supporters Shield by quite a margin. They unfortunately went out with a poor taste in their mouth, losing to Inter Miami, but they probably won't care too much. It's not really what you want to go out with going into playoffs, but they still had a very, very successful season. And a Canadian from the New England Revolution got first place in the East, with a Canadian from the Colorado Rapids got first place in the West. So a couple of Canadians doing well there. Moving on over to Chapman for Inter Miami. They are going to be without playoffs. And lastly on this list is going to be Liam Fraser, a player who is involved in the Canadian national team. He's been, in my eyes, pretty successful when playing for the Canadian national team, is Liam Fraser and his side, the Columbus Crew. Unfortunately, though, they slipped out and were not able to make playoffs in the East. And it's just been one of those years where Columbus is successful and then has a year off, and Porter's going to have to figure that out going forward. So that's it for this week for Canadian men's national team players abroad. It is your complete update from November 1st to the 8th. Let me know what you guys think. If you had any input, if you watched any of these matches, if you had anything or any players you want me to cover for the next week going forward, because it is the national break right now, which means a ton of Canadian men's national team content is coming up with our previews, our watch-alongs, and our 5 takeaways of the 2 matches against Costa Rica and, of course, Mexico. So hopefully you guys are still enjoying this series. And if you are, you have to make sure that you drop a big like and a sub as well to show us that this is a series worth continuing. And once again, another big shout out to our friends from Canucks Abroad. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to drop a like, drop a sub on your guys' way out, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers, friends.